Does this sound like your child? A parent writes that her son has an inability to focus and complete tasks. She wishes he had better study habits. They have been doing daily tutoring. She doesn't say for how long, but it sounds like for a while, without much in terms of results. She wants for him to feel confident in doing and completing his work. She wants him to know the material and be able to work independently. So, those descriptions and those goals are very general and very broad. And so, it's a little tricky to figure out how to get your arms around them and what might be going on, what might be uh, at play here, and what kinds of things would be involved in helping this parent and this child have more success in terms of their academics in school. So we have a few clues here. Again, we're general. We're going to have to sort of um, imagine. We're going to have to do a little bit of speculation as to what might be going on. If we were actually working with this family, we would, of course, be able to do a cognitive assessment and we would have a much better idea of how this child learns. But we want to take a look at these clues because this is what the parent is experiencing, much like many parents. An inability to focus. So that can mean a number of different things. It can be a situation where a child has difficulty getting down to work, getting started on their work, homing in on what the task is that's got to be done. Or it could mean that they can get started, but then get off track. Maybe they're distracted. Maybe something pulls them. Maybe they just have difficulty sustaining their effort for the period of time that's needed to complete the task or the assignment. And those can be a couple of different things. It might be some attention skills. It might be sustained attention, your ability to really stick on, keep your focus on something for a period of time, or it might be selective attention, where you have to screen out distractions as you are working on whatever the task might be. It sounds like it might be a little bit more the latter in this case because she talks about completing tasks. But it doesn't necessarily need to be attention. It could simply be, sometimes when children are faced with a cognitively demanding task. So when you have a task that requires, or an assignment that requires a good deal of mental effort to do, maybe it's retrieving information, maybe it's just thinking about something that's complex. Maybe it's combining a number of different cognitive processes into one where you have to hold information in your mind, you have to pull in and retrieve information from memory, you have to compare it, you have to maybe manipulate it in some different ways. Those are cognitively demanding tasks that require energy and stamina. Our brains use a lot of energy, especially when they're working hard. And so that can simply be a sign that there also might be weaknesses, maybe in working memory or in the general long-term memory skills, if it's effortful to retrieve those things. And that's why it becomes tiring, and difficult to complete a task. When the parent says she wishes that her child had better study habits, I think we can all probably agree as parents or as educators that we would love it if our children all had good study habits. But what are good study habits? That's a question that I think many parents struggle with. They have an idea, maybe, if they were good students or diligent students, about what worked for them when they were younger and when they were in school. But we know a lot more today about both in general, the kinds of strategies and the kinds of habits that are going to be effective in supporting long-term learning and understanding, and those that maybe won't be as effective. But it's also important to take into account what we know about a specific learner, because everyone learns differently. Every student is a little bit different in terms of how they learn. And if we don't know that, then we cannot optimize their study skills and their study habits and the strategies that we recommend to them. So here's a simple example. Let's say that we have our children come home with a list of vocabulary words that they need to learn. There's going to be a test. So very often when teachers assign a list of vocabulary words, they will assign a study process that involves write the word, write the definition of the word, write the word in a sentence. As adults, many of us have had assignments like that when we were younger. That kind of assignment was a good assignment for me. It worked for me because my verbal memory is very strong, stronger than my visual memory. So I have an easier time remembering words, language-based information, what I see, what I hear or read. That's easier for me to remember than something that I see. If I have an image I have to recall, I put it into words. I describe it. I characterize it in words, in language. So what about children who have stronger visual memory? Well, stronger visual memory, that's not a very good assignment. It's going to be very inefficient. It's going to be very challenging for them, and it won't result in them actually generally having a good understanding of the words and ability to retrieve it. A waste of time. If instead we gave them images to associate, actually we shouldn't give them images, we should have them choose images that they connect, that have a meaning that they can associate with each of those vocabulary words. We might give them flashcards with an image together with the word so that they can then maybe think of a situation. They're probably going to put it into words at some point, but the key to connecting that and making it easier for their brains to hold on to it and retrieve it the next day or for the test or whenever it is having that visual information to associate with it. So then we get to, so that's an example of a student-specific strategy that depends on how they learn best. We can also look at good study habits or good study strategies that are more general and that we can pretty much recommend for just about anybody. So I often get asked to talk to students about memorizing information, whether it happens to be vocabulary words or math facts or whatever it happens to be. And many students use flashcards, but many students use flashcards very ineffectively. What do I mean by that? So very often they create a stack of flashcards and they go over them and over them and over them and they review them and they are hoping really that information will come back to them when it's time for the test. The benefit of flashcards is that they involve, if you use them correctly, is that they involve effortful retrieval. It's like testing yourself. You don't just want to review them, you want to test yourself. That is what results in faster and more efficient and more accurate learning. And there's a great amount of research that that's a good general study habit, good practice. And so we want to make sure that you're testing yourself, number one. Number two, there is no point in reviewing the whole stack of flashcards because you probably already know some of them, or your child probably already knows some of them. Reviewing those is a waste of time. So put them aside. Separate out those you know into the stack, whether it's math facts, if you know what 5 times 12 is 60, put that one aside. That's one I know. So you're going to winnow the stack down to the ones that are more challenging for you, that you haven't learned yet, that are not in memory where it's just there for you to retrieve it. Now, the other part of doing that is to make sure that you shuffle the cards, mix them up, change the order. When we continually work on something in the same order, our brains become dependent on the order of them, the sequence, as one way of remembering the information. And we don't want that. With this kind of information, with vocabulary words or with math facts, we want them just to be there, independent of the order. We don't have to want to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G to figure out, what comes after G, for example, in the alphabet. We just want to be able to come up with it. We don't want to have to think about whether 5 times 11 is 55 and then 5 times 12 is 60 and do that counting. We don't want those to be dependent on each other. So those are some examples of study skills. So study habits and study skills are a little more complicated, I think, than most people realize, but only because they don't have the information, because most parents, in fact, most teachers don't really know how their students learn. They don't have that information. They could do a much better job of helping them choose the right kinds of study practices if they did. So you really need to have that information to be able to take that step. Next thing I want to just comment a little bit on is this concept of tutoring. We've been doing tutoring. Lots and lots of parents seek out help from tutors, and sometimes it's extraordinarily helpful. If your child has missed some school, if there are certain areas that they didn't quite get and need a little bit more one-on-one instruction, that can be great, can be really helpful in helping them with some of those gaps in their learning. But one of the things to be really aware of is that most tutoring is reteaching. So it's teaching in a smaller setting. Maybe it's one-on-one, maybe it's 1-2 or 1-3 in a learning center of some kind. But generally what it is instruction, not necessarily based on how an individual child learns. So again, you may get some of those generalized good study habits. You may get some repetition. You may get a different explanation that happens to stick, but it's not really necessarily based on how that individual student learns. And it is about instruction. It is not building up skills like attention or working memory or flexible thinking or reasoning skills, the other kinds of things that really form the foundation for learning. So it's going to have a very short-term effect. It's not going to fundamentally change how a child learns. It may fill in gaps, and that may be really important, but there's a real difference there. And I think that's something that people need to, parents especially, need to be clear on when they are deciding to do tutoring or other kinds of interventions like cognitive training. Just to tackle some of these next things, like I don't know of any parent who doesn't really want this for their child, for them to feel confident in doing and completing their work, for them to know the material. We want learning to be taking place, and we want them to be able to work independently. So I think that just about applies to every parent and every child, probably on the face of the earth. And some children do pretty well at that. Some children have those underlying cognitive skills that make it easier for them to do that. But being confident is difficult when you learn differently. When a child learns differently and when they don't understand how they learn, every learning experience is precarious. It could be threatening. It's unpredictable. We never know when we're learners who learn differently what kind of situation we're going to be in, whether this thing is going to be that someone's asking us to do is going to be difficult or it's going to be easy. And if we've struggled a lot, we're going to assume that everything is going to be difficult and a challenge and an uphill battle. And we're going to feel bad about it, and we're going to feel inadequate. You hear so many kids say, I'm just dumb, I just can't do this. And so you can't ask a child to be confident that they're going to approach something with confidence if they have that experience of not being able to do it. Confidence is built by success. It's built on the back of trying things that are challenging and succeeding in doing them. It's built on having the skills to be able to tackle the challenge. If we think of simple examples again, like a child who has had swimming lessons is going to be very confident jumping into the swimming pool. A child who has the skills to be able to run a long distance is going to take that on confidently. Their first step on that track is going to be a confident, steady, strong one. In a learning situation, their first approach is going to be to take it on, whatever that problem is that they're faced with, and know that they have a variety of skills to tackle that. So what really creates confidence ultimately in kids, especially those who have struggled with learning, is the process of building cognitive skills. And we know that cognitive skills, things like attention and memory and visual processing and auditory processing and the integration of those skills, all those mental processes that we use to learn can be developed to a greater degree and actually much more quickly than most people realize. And when kids do that, they know for certain that they're going to be able to tackle whatever that challenge is. And they come to a learning situation with confidence. So that's what's really involved. And then they start to become more independent. But we need to help our children develop those skills, both those underlying cognitive skills and their knowledge of the best practices and studying, how to study based on their cognitive strengths and based on general good study practices. It's because otherwise we just can't expect them to guess it for themselves, right? We all, as adults, probably found some way to study, or maybe someone gave us some tips that were helpful to us. But we're not born. We don't come into the world with this book of here are your study habits. And most children don't necessarily know the best study habits, but we can really help them with that and provide those that confidence that comes with knowing that we have the skills to do something, knowing that we know how to learn the material and be able to retrieve it and use it, and knowing that we have an approach that will allow us to do something independently and have confidence also when we need help or need direction, that we understand that we can ask for that and that we're really, feel very positive about doing that because we can explain where we are getting it and where we aren't getting it, where we need a little bit of help, and where we can seek out that kind of help in a way that supports our confidence in ourselves as learners. So those are thoughts on a particular message from a parent whose child is having some struggles with learning. And I'm going to post in the comments below a link to a parent training session that we have that is very helpful in understanding how parents can help their children overcome learning struggles and become capable, confident learners. So until next time, see you soon.